Basta salamat at ika'y isinilang. Di pangkaraniwan, para siyang superhero. Hinarap lahat ng pagsubok, yung iba hindi biro. Meron siyang misyon, kaya walang takot sumabak. Mga buhay na nagkasalalay sa kanyang pangarap. Parang pelikula, action, adventure, drama. May konting comedy, love story na pangmasa. Galing sa wala, akala mo talo.
Conversations, remote orders and instructions, then I think our team will fail. So something like that. So you need to balance all this. And because of the new normal, because of this, everything that's going on, I think especially those coaches who are really good with face-to-face must also now venture into this management side of things. For example, before going forward with the slides, right now, they are now managing kids remotely. They're managing their practice by computer. They're contacting parents, asking the parents to do something. So that's still management. That's not coaching anymore because you're actually not the one teaching the kids. You're not the one there to tell them right or wrong. You're just watching them or giving feedback. So now you need managerial skill. You need to motivate the kid even without you. You need to motivate the parents, explain why we need to do this. So that's the classification or distinction that I want to bring in. Now, for the question, why do you coach? This is an open-ended question. For me, when people ask me to hire coaches to work with me or for us, these are the 4 things that I go for. Your motivation, that's the first one. You can be motivated by anything, winning, prestige, money. Nothing is wrong. Anything, it's your motivation, it's yours. No problem. But the motivation needs to have a goal. You cannot just say, I want to develop, I want to learn more. Okay. When I hear people telling me they want to learn more what? That's the next question, because there's so many things to learn, so many things to learn, and you have limited time and limited application. So you need to have goals also, even short-term goals, like for the next 3 years, for the next 5 years, something like that. So when I speak to other coaches, especially those who are starting, I'm trying to get them not just motivated, they can be motivated by themselves. I'm trying to get them goal-oriented. So at least they have some things that they can work on, even when I'm not there. So that's how I coach usually. Now, for the strengths and weaknesses, some coaches, they're not really good with this one. If I ask someone, what's your 5 biggest strengths? They will think, what about your weaknesses? They also don't know. So if you are not sure even of what you can do or what you cannot do, if you don't know your strengths, you cannot even apply for something because you don't even know if you're good at that one. At the same time, for the weakness, if you don't know your weakness, you will never improve, because improvement comes from your weakness. Every weakness you can turn to strength, find another weakness, turn it to strengths again. So that's how you usually do. I'm not saying there's a end result, but at least there's progress every time. So for example, for this one, I was talking to Coach, for example, Coach Dindo, Coach Mel, when they were telling me that Zen seminar for Zoom and all this management are very new for them, I also told them it's also new for me. It's like these last 3 months, this is the first time I use this application. So I'm learning all the kinks. But if your strength is learning new things related to social media, then this will be very easy for you. So you can start your own webinar, you can start your own podcast, because this is very new for you. Now, if this is your weakness, I know many coaches who are very weak. Up to now, when I told them, do you have Zoom account? Have you ever tried it? Did you watch any webinar? They said no. I asked them why. It's free. You can just join. Because for them, that's not how they learn things. But I told them, now, then you set your limit. Because your weakness, you don't turn it to your strength. So things like that. Okay, so next is, for me, I just made an acronym for this one. So you should be caring, open, adaptable, creative, and hungry. You can have so many definitions of a coach, but these are the 5 that for me these are the 5 that stands out. So first is care. Anything that comes from caring or love is good. I don't see anything bad that will happen if you're coming from a point of care. Even if you're being critical, even if you're a bit hard, if it's coming from a point of care, it's okay. Now, open, you need to be open to anything. And again, connected to that is adaptable. You need to be able to adapt and find your way out. You cannot just be stuck in your ways. Then creative, this one is connected to adaptability. You can be able to adapt, but you may not be creative enough to flourish. So you also need to be creative. And then hungry, you always need to learn new things. Now, this next one is a very common thing, but the thing with this one is I picked this picture specifically because you can find on the internet, there's so many things. This is a good leader, this is a bad leader, this is a definition of what's good and what's not. With this one, this is a survey. That's why it's important. It's different because with the survey, you will know what your employees are looking for or what people around you are looking for. It's not a textbook definition. It's what people are looking for. For example, I'll give you an example. For the great leader side, on the right side, they focus on employee strength. 10% of 140 mention that one. And then you have to be considerate. You need to manage crisis, for example. You need to be a good motivator. If you notice at the bottom, humility is at the bottom. Why? Some people, they think that if they respect you or they know that you know what you're saying, even if you're a bit arrogant, they're okay. So on the survey for them, it's not the first thing to do. It's not on top of the list. Why am I saying this one? This is just a guide. What I want my coaches, or at least those who work with me after they work with me, is they do self-evaluation regularly. So you can do surveys with your anonymous survey with your students or with your with the parents that you work with or with your staff. So at least they you know how they see you. This is very important. So on the left side, you see their arrogance is the topmost that people hate, but you also see that the one that for me should be okay is decides without reasoning. So some of the good leaders or good coaches, if for me what they're saying is unreasonable, I don't listen to them. Now, here's the thing. Now, not everyone share my view. So the point is you can have these things. Some may be favorable for you. Some you don't really care. For example, has favoritism. For me, I don't really care because even my parents, they have favorites and that's not me. My sister. So it's okay. I mean, it's a human nature. It's okay. You prefer something over someone or someone over someone. So there are things that maybe as a coach, you put on your highest priority, but the people around you don't really care about that one. For example, there's a coach that's really good in terms of making rules. I give you an example. If I whistle, I want you all to run to me and then put the ball and then 2 claps like that every time. So it's good fun. It's a bit military, but it's okay. But to be honest, he values kids who really follow that one. But all of them, when I spoke to them, they don't really care. They don't really understand why they need to do this, why they need to run, because he doesn't explain. What he just wants is for them to follow. And if they see them following, for him, it's a success. So that's actually not good because you're not communicating what you want with what they really think. So this one is usually what I do, self-evaluation. So it's not new, but every time I finish a project, I try to ask feedback from my group and feedback from my bosses. Maybe that's why they keep me long time because I know what I went wrong, where I went wrong, and I know maybe how to try to solve it. So that's it. Now, this one is very important because as coaches, all of us, we should know which one of us is this and which we need to select. So, for example, I'll mention Coach Rain. For example, Coach Rain, the 413 Basketball Academy. So, there's 5 things here. There's mentoring. So, mentoring is you share your experience with them. You have this consulting, meaning you're an expert in something, then you teach them what to do. Counseling is you need to try to elevate or negate the negative things that happened with them. And then you have the training wherein you teach your knowledge. So consulting is different because consulting is advice. They don't need to follow. Training is you need to stick to them and they need to follow you or copy you if you can. Now, coaching, for me, I cannot say it's a mixture of all, but I also don't want to say that it's higher than all 5 because there are very good consultants. There are very good consultants. There are also very good trainers, skills trainer. Can you hear me? Yes, very good trainers. You cannot say that a very good skills trainer, for example, who's the famous one that NBTC tapped? Gannon Baker. I remember, you know Gannon Baker, Coach Mel, if you remember him. So Gannon Baker or Algero, something. If you go to them, or for example, in the Philippines, the context is, for example, Mavs, phenomenal basketball. It's more on the dribbling side and all this. They're very, very good trainers, very, very good, top level trainers. That's why other people are saying that you only focus on training, not mentoring. You don't teach them values. You don't give them advice. You don't give them coaching. You only focus on training. They are not claiming that they are basketball coaches. They are claiming they're very good trainers, very efficient trainers. This is good. So as a coach, aside from thinking why you want to do stuff, you also need to categorize yourself. You cannot be everything. So for example, with me, I can consider myself as a consultant, of course. I cannot say I'm a mentor yet because I'm young. I cannot say I have so many experience. I have some, but not as much as other people. So I'm consulting. I don't do counseling too much because I don't do a personal, like there's so many people to talk to straight one-on-one because counseling is always therapeutic, like a one-on-one thing. Cannot be like a mass counseling. Cannot be like that. So I can say I'm a consultant, I'm a coach, and at certain elements, I can be a mentor. Now, why I don't choose to be a trainer? If you focus on training, first you need to excel in what you train them for. If you cannot execute, you cannot expect them to follow. You can motivate them to try, but if you're a trainer, then it's a different thing. So you can be many. And again, I'm only focusing this on the coaching aspect. There's not management here. You can be a sports manager. You can be a sports scientist. You can be a sports nutritionist. You can also be so as I said, team manager, sports nutritionist, or sports psychologist, all related to sports. But these are the usual things for basketball coaches, the ones who are really into the nitty-gritty of the sports, the one on the court. These are usually the 5 aspects that they need to balance. So again, for me, for grassroots, which is more important? For me, for grassroots, we do away with training, we do away with consulting. It's counseling, coaching, and mentoring. Because for grassroots, you're older than them. So you need to be a perfect example. So your life experiences will be the ones you can share with them. How, for example, I was fat before, then it motivates me to become slimmer and more athletic. And then you have this coaching factor, and you also counsel. For example, they have some problems in their homes. Some kids are bullying them, all this factor. So the training part and the consulting part, that one is more for the actual teams, like maybe U16, U18. You need to consult, you need to give them advice on how to be successful, and then you need to focus more on training. So that one. So it's up to the coaches. It's really open. This is an open presentation, by the way. Now, so that's part 1. That's basically like what's sports management, what's sports science, and as a coach, where do you belong? So it's really up to you. That's the answer. These are the options that you can take. So that's for part 1. So
yes, Coach.
Continue, Coach.
I will ask the coaches if they have a question for you, Coach.
Thank you, Coach.
Coach Enrico, you have a question for Coach Kalvin?
Well, so far, it's more on explanatory thing. I mean, all of whatever I saw here is what it should be. So there no more, no yet question for me.
Yes, Coach. Coach David?
I'm just loving this. This is awesome.
Yes.
So, Coach, I don't want you to stop. I think I do have some questions, but I prefer you to continue on with your presentation, and so then if anyone else outside as well, if people have questions that are listening live on Facebook, if we can incorporate those too at a certain time, that'd be great. But for me right now, I'd rather hear you continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach.
All right, Coach.
Thank you, Coach Kalvin. Part 2, Coach.
Okay, so we go for the part 2. So if the first one is a basic definition of what management and what science is, and you merge them together, you produce a coach of certain variables. For example, 70% manager, 30% coaching, 50-50, or the other way around. Now, and you already know their motivation, you already know their goals, their strengths and weaknesses, and they already identify themselves as a coach or a trainer or a counselor. Once part 1 is done, then now this is the part 2. This is grassroots setting. Why did I put grassroots setting as the definition for this one, for this, at least for this talk? Because you cannot apply, this is my most important point. You cannot apply grassroots training in other trainings. Grassroots is very different. So I'll explain. So grassroots and development definition. So for grassroots is the most basic foundation or source of any structure. By definition, it can be a concept. For example, this my example before was grassroots music. For example, in Alabama, for example. So there's a festival. There's a community there that fosters original music. You cannot play covers. You cannot play anything else. So that's what they call homegrown talents come from. So it's a grassroots concept that they want to foster. So you will experience there people who are amateurish by professional standards. They bring their own stuff. They don't have sound engineers and all this. There's a documentary about this. But without the grassroots music, that type of music will die. If there's no feeding up to the professional scene of that particular concept, it will die. That's why you need this concept to always be flourishing. So the foundation part is very important. Now, it can also be used, grassroots can also be used as a group of people. So for example, I can say BCAP, for example, BCAP, Basketball Coaches Association of the Philippines. So you can be a member, and then you can also be part of the elite, like maybe PBA coaches, UAAP coaches, and all this. So usually when you say grassroots for a common man, it's usually the normal, the average member. It's like a normal membership. So why do I say this one? The things that we will discuss today or in these few hours is mainly for those, because maybe for them, they think that the way to go is to move on from grassroots to somewhere. It's not true. If that's the case, I'll give you an example. For example, junior NBA, I'm associated with junior NBA. Then junior NBA should end somewhere. It should end because the aim is for you to develop all this coach of the year and make them to a higher level coach. Kids to become higher level. So you need to follow them. Can be junior NBA, and then after 5 years, you follow them, create another thing for them, then create another thing for them. Because for you, it's a hierarchy. No, grassroots on its own has its own ecosystem. You can be the best clinician, best grassroots development coach, but you don't really need to. You can stay there for like 50. I met with Jim Corona, for example. He's an American. He lives in India. He's been doing this for, I think, 50 years, junior NBA style. So he's a clinician, and when NBA needs people to do clinics for grassroots, he's the first one to tap. You can tap younger coaches, but he's the one to be tapped because he knows his stuff for the grassroots. Same with Coach Frank Lopez, also from the US. So those stuff, I don't know if in the Philippines we have clinicians like those, like really focus on the grassroots, because usually the thing with the Philippines, when you say grassroots, it's still geared towards competition. Meaning, yes, you coach the grassroots level, like maybe 10 or 12, but you still look to make a team, and then the team needs to compete somewhere against the school or against other clubs. So the grassroots itself, as a concept, it's not geared towards anything. It's just geared towards making it alive, making something alive. So if you want to teach grassroots basketball, as long as you're encouraging kids to pick up a ball and play, learn about their body and move, that's all you need to worry about. The success comes later. So that's why I have very, very high respect for good grassroots coaches, because without them, the interest in the game will diminish because everything will gear towards the competition side of it. Now, the last one is, it can be a movement also. So like a political grassroots, but this one is just a textbook definition. So for the basketball side, for the grassroots, next slide is this one. When someone says grassroots, everyone is saying it's youth. Not necessarily. So some systems in Asia, for example, they define it by age. 5 to 8, 9 to 12, 13 to 16. So this is what we call playgroup. It started in the academy system or the Lyceum system. So Lyceum, Academy, all these are like a Greek style of teaching. So, and the university system also is a style of teaching. Montessori is also a style of teaching. So all these styles of teaching, school of thought on how to properly teach kids, there's what we call now the play group style. So you just group them together and let them play. And they just group it by physical traits. For example, they group 5 to 8 with almost the same body definition. Not one is too much stronger than the other. So when they play, at least they don't hurt each other, something like that. So it's just play groups. You can do it like this. You can also do it by school. So you have elementary, junior high school, senior high school. When I was growing up, it's just elementary, high school. Now there's the grade 11, 12, 6, 7, 8, 9, junior high school, senior high school. In Indonesia, for example, there's the SD, SMP, SMA, and TK for the preschool. And some, they also do it by competition. They don't really care about your level. Maybe you're a grade 7, but your age is this age. As long as you fall under U12, I use you in the competition. This is where some kids, for example, you're very good in U12. The coach wants to invest in you. I'll put you in the U14 team. So at least you're already playing with the big boys, something like that. So it's still grassroots, but there's no clear-cut definition on where it ends. Now, some base it on skill level, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. But up to what point? That's the thing. So when you talk about grassroots, I don't really talk about age. You need to talk about age or the school system, elementary, high school, because you need to group them together. But when you are talking about the concept what to teach, it always should be, this is fundamental. As long as you are teaching fundamentals, it's still grassroots level. That's my take. So of course, when I put it here, after U18, I stopped. Because for me, when you're already 18, you're already adult. That one, the involvement of the parents, very, very minimal. It's just you, the coach, and the kid. So on the next slides, I'll discuss all this part. But as long as you are dealing with a coach, a parent, a kid, and a team's or school manager, you're already still at grassroots. When you remove, for example, the parents, because usually the manager takes over. I give you scholarship, I give you board and lodging, I give you allowance. Now the kid is a property of the school. So now it's just the school, the coach, and the kid. Once it's like that, it's no longer grassroots. Because you are now searching for talents, you are now searching for investment materials, you are now searching for something. Unlike grassroots, it's for everyone. As long as you are interested, you join, then I can group you into something, and then you can evolve, and then maybe you go to the higher or the next level. Maybe not, doesn't really matter as long as the interest is there. So that's how I define grassroots. It also helps me because when I'm talking to coaches and I say, do you have a team? They say, yes. Okay. Your team is in a school. Yes, coach. Okay. Do you offer scholarships? Do you recruit players? No, coach, just homegrown talents. Okay. How many in your team? 15, coach. Okay. Do you have team A, team B? No, coach, just one team. Okay. How many population in your school? Around 800, coach, for elementary, for example. Then you don't have a program. You only have a team. That's a problem because you are not developing the grassroots of your school. You're only developing the team. So the grassroots, again, as I said, it needs to keep the team alive. You need to have a pool. You need to have some activities with them that makes them stick to the sport and proceed to be a member of the team. So in Philippines, that's actually a bit of a problem because basketball is so popular that when you're young, you think of the sport as something that you need to excel at. In other countries, they consider basketball as one of the options for sports. They can play rugby, they can play football, they can play basketball, they can play, I don't know, another sport. So they just consider it as one option. So they don't really put too much burden on themselves to excel. Maybe that's where the system is different. That's where if they think they're good or their parents think they have potential or they're good, then they enroll in a club. club is separate from the school. So you can be not too much good in the school at first, then you enroll in a club, then you get better in the club because you have more training than the normal students in your school. You have extra training in the club. So when you go back to your school, you're a bit better. So that's how they classify it. And if you're a club coach, you may or may not be a teacher or a physical education teacher in the school. So the school, if your team, you just want to be part of the team in the school, you don't really need to push yourself too much in other countries, because it's just, if you're one of the best among the ones in the school, you can play. But if in the Philippines, no. Why do I mean no? You recruit player, even at U14, U12, you try to recruit, you try to invest. That's the problem. Now it's not homegrown. So you're not developing a grassroots program anymore. You're developing a team to win. So I hope if there's people listening, this definition should be very, very straight with you, yourself as a coach, your management, the parents, and the kids. If we are doing grassroots, we are doing grassroots. If we are aiming to win, and don't need to pay too much attention on the others who are not so skilled, who are problem kids, then it's a different factor altogether. So I hope that sets the tone of what grassroots is, at least for me. So for this one, for the roles of the stakeholders, I mentioned stakeholders because when you say stakeholders, they don't have decision making, but they have influence. I put coach as the top because we're dealing with coaches here, but not in all scenarios. Some scenarios, the management is higher than the coach because the coach works for the management. Some scenario, if the coach is a bit like famous coach, or the management invites the coach to coach their school, then the coach can make some demands. So this is a sort of small political thing. Politics is not in any way bad. Politics, by definition, is just one institution or one thing influencing another thing. The only problem is in the Philippines, politics is always relegated to the politicians and their bad dealings. But influencing others, for example, as a coach, I try to influence the parents to think like me. I try to influence the management to think like me. That's politics. I'm playing politics, influence. So I don't use politics too much because in the Philippines, it's considered bad. But in other countries, politics is the perfect term for this one, how to influence the other parts of the group. So coach, players, parents, team, and management. So let's start with the coach, the most obvious question. Coach, what's my role in the whole ecosystem? As a coach, you need to have extensive knowledge of the field. Again, as I mentioned to you, you can be a trainer, you can be a mentor, a consultant, a coach, or a counselor, but still part of coaching. You still need to be more knowledgeable than the normal adult in the system, in the situation. You need to be able to identify, train, and bring out performance on athletes. That's why I put it on the second part, because you need to be able to identify. You cannot just get someone who's already good and call yourself a coach. You're a recruiter. It's very different. So things like this, you need to be able to identify, train, and bring out. If you can do that, even on a small scale, you can make someone run faster. You can make someone shoot better. That's coaching. But if you get someone who's already like a blue chip kid, then that's recruitment. So I just want to clarify roles. Now, create practice and training plan. There's so many coaches that I know started already doing this. They take from internet, they take from some small notebooks and all. I told them, as long as you are writing down stuff, trying to organize it, creating practice plan, that's good. You don't need to have a very intricate, complicated practice plan, good for presentation to the big universities. As long as your team, your management understands what you need to do for the next week or the next month, that's cool, that's good. Then you must know the individual and the team needs. And in a small scale setup, in the common practice in the Philippines, you're also the manager, the benefactor, you're also the pseudo parent, the guardian. I want to mention Coach Rain on this one. I know their 413 Basketball Academy is doing this. They're helping kids like out of school youth and all this as free, training for free. And they even give out presents to the kids, make them a family. So if you notice this one, Coach, where's the 2-3 fast break? Where's the pick and roll here? It's not there. Because when you deal with grassroots, you have to deal with this stuff on a daily basis first. The the pick and roll, the low post, all this dribbling stuff is only maybe 20 minutes to 30 minutes of your practice. For example, you practice for 1 hour. You can say, for that 1 hour, I focus on basketball drills. Okay. The next 23 hours of the same day, you need to think about this practice plan. What about the problem of your kid? He has a problem with the mom. The manager of the school is not paying the bill for the cleaning of the equipment and all this. You have to think of so many things, and the training is only 1 hour. So that's why I say that you need, for grassroots, you need to put this small scale setup, especially if you're a starting coach. If you're starting, you need to go through this. If not, it will also help you become more confident and also become more decisive in your planning, because you already passed through this stage of being the, what you call this, the jack of all trades, something like that. Now, just a quote that I picked up. So this is very important for grassroots for me. That's why I picked this quote specifically. It's helping them to learn rather than teaching them. When I say 1,000 words and they pick up 100, that's 10% of what I said. When I say 1,000 words and I told them, hey, can you explain to me or repeat to me what you understood? You don't need to quote me, you don't need to think, just explain to me in your own words. That's creation from their end. They need to create, they don't need to parrot you, they don't need to just repeat after you. So in grassroots, it's very important because that's the formative stage. So next, as a player, this one I don't really want to dwell too much because it's more on the individual that we teach. So in a grassroots system, the individual is the most important one. It's not the coach, it's not the parents, it's not anyone, it's the player. So the third one is the point I think I want to make is compete versus develop. So this is a balancing act. Again, as I said, it depends on where you are. If you're in a club or if you're in a competitive team and you're not really teaching grassroots, like teaching 100 kids, 200 kids, you're just focusing on 10 to 15 kids, then sure, you just more go with the competition side. But if you're a coach who happens to have a team plus a whole club in the school to teach, then you need to prioritize and balance. So next, individual goals, which can be measured. As a player, you need to have individual goals, or at least as a coach, you need to tell them to have their own individual goals, which can be measured. Cannot just say, practice shooting. Coach, practice shooting how? Do you want me to jump? Do you want me to do it off a dribble? Do you want me to do it off a pass? Do you want me to shoot from the elbow? Do you want me to shoot from the corner? Cannot just say practice shooting. So it should be something that you can measure. So that if it's too much for you to do, because there's so many of them, you make an index card of all of them, have them do some skills training on their own, and they just, or pair them up. You score for me, I score for you, and then we submit to the coach every week. Something like that. It should be measured. At least they have some performance index. Then, of course, they must form sports values. It's very important. So that's for the player. Now, Jeremy Lin is one of my favorite player in terms of his story. So he is a Harvard dude, and it's like nobody like, what you call this, paid attention to him. When Melo got injured, that's the insanity moment. And then after his rise, he fell. He was a champion last year with the Raptors. And then after the league, after Kawhi left, no one wants to take him. And he was like crying and all this. It felt really bad. But his Cinderella story is something that maybe kids will hope for. So if I'm teaching someone, yes, the LeBron James, the KDs, the Stephs, the Jordans are good. But if you really want to relate to someone, Jeremy Lin would be your best bet. He's Asian also. So, and his quote is like this. So the academics is the real priority. When he tried to play, he played for scholarship also. So then never gets easier, you just get better. So if you try to foster this mentality to the kids, they will not think of the level as something that's not achievable. As long as they're They know that they need to do something, and then when it gets easy, they need to challenge themselves harder. Then you can do away with the level. The intermediate, the advanced, those are just classification to start. But progression of each kid is different. You cannot classify them, okay, you stay in the beginner for 5 months and then intermediate for 10 months. That's just insane, because you cannot say that even twins, they develop at a different point. You have Robin Lopez and Brooke Lopez, for example, in the NBA. They're twins, but they develop very different style. So as long as they keep on challenging themselves, I think that's a good way to go as a coach. Because if you're not their coach anymore, they still have these values with them that they need to always improve. Now for the parents, this is a bit tricky part for the grassroots. If you notice in the other, for example, elite camps or talk about the screen motion or flex or flow patterns, it's just focused on the court, your material, the plays, and all this. Here we are, coaches, talking about parents, but because it's a grassroots, so we need to have this, because I put it there. Aside from the emulation of values, they are the benefactor. If you're in a school, parents are the one paying the tuition fees. They're also paying for the sports fees if there is, and they're the lifeline of the school. If they choose to not pay the school, then there's no money for you to get your salary. So they're the benefactors. Now, in grassroots, this is the tricky part, especially in the setting where it's a bit more what you call this, a bit high-end schools, because you have rich families and all this. That's why I'll move to the next one after this with the management. But this one, number 3, is very important. As a coach, you need to be able to talk straight with parents, and you say that there cannot be a second coach. They can be a trainer, they can be a monitor. You can ask them to, hey, can you help me score this kid? Can you help me gather them, start, for example, the warm-up and all this? But they cannot be a second coach. For example, at home, you're the coach, you tell this kid one thing, when he gets home, the dad or the mom will just say, hey, don't listen to your coach. This is what you need to do in the game tomorrow, okay? If that's the case, then you don't have a grassroots program. You just have a bunch of kids who are playing for themselves or for their parents. So that's not a good program to begin with. So you need to change it, or if you're starting, you just need to make the culture on its own strong. So new parents and new kids who will join will adopt the system. Next is the best source for external management for athletes. So this one is where I think some coaches lack. They lack communicating with parents. They talk to the kids, like, this is what you do when you go home. You need to be able to talk to the parents, because first you are dealing with minors. These are 18 years old kids and below. You cannot just ask them to do anything, because when they go home, I hope they need to learn how to do household chores. They need to do their homework and all this. What you need to do is you need to talk to the parents and ask the parents to help you manage their kids. And from what I know, all the good athletes that's produced, especially in the provinces, they are coming from a family that understands sports. Because if they don't, they usually don't support the kid in their endeavor. So that one. Now for the team, this one is more what we call on the elite side as the culture. Team built culture. Team wins and loses as one. And then name in front is more important. You already heard all of this. No blame game, train as one, and must know their impact. The last one, I think, knowing their impact. So for grassroots, feedback and communication is very important. I always have this story that when I was doing basketball, so I played for UP, but not the varsity, but just in our college. In one coach mentioned to me that I made a good screen. So how we play is like this. I'm already old, around 16, 17, 18, but I started late because my first sports was chess. I played chess competitively before going to basketball. So I don't know if I'm doing something right or wrong. It's already on the maybe 2 to 3 months already into the team training. When he mentioned to me that I set the good screen, I actually, to this day, I actually forgot his face. I actually forgot his name. but I still know that I set a good screen. So when I'm playing pickup games, I'm trying to copy what I was doing before because it sticks to me. My impact should be maybe screening or maybe rebounding, something like that. So it's very important that in this concept of grassroots, you need to give each individual player something to work on or some feedback. You cannot just think that if the team wins, it's good for everyone. No, they should always have some impact assessment on what they need to do or what they need to work on. And it doesn't take too long. You just need to pay attention to everyone. That's basically what you need to always remember, not just the starters or not just the stars. Then for the management, this is hopefully they must allow a system to flourish, a system, not an individual. Because if there's a system involved, the coach can be replaced, assistant coach can be replaced, the kids can graduate, but the system is still there. So if there's a system in place, it's easier to just adjust. So for example, we all heard of like Duke basketball and then like Princeton system and all this because it's a system. So, and it's not there just for 2 years, 3 years, it's there for decades. So, and usually at that level, you can say that if I want to play like that, I need to enroll in that system. You cannot get that system in other places. So even in grassroots, you can have like that. It cannot be like I want to enroll in a basketball camp or in a basketball clinic, I can just go anywhere. If you're really a good planner for your grassroots program, even inside the school or in a clinic or a camp, a paid camp, like kids pay per session to attend your camp, you need to have some form of identity of what you need to do. So without that, it's a bit hard to create culture. So again, from the management standpoint, should not be individualistic, it should be realistic, and should be open and honest. So I have clubs, for example, in Malaysia that I spoke with. They mentioned to me some hocus pocus on the management side. Usually whispers like this on the management side will always reach the players, will always reach the parents, and it always screws up everything. So as long as the management is open and honest with the standing where we are, the challenges, the hardships on all this, I think everyone will be on the same page. So moving forward with this one. Okay, so I always say contribute. Let's just try to contribute everywhere we go. Just try to contribute. Now, common interaction rules in grassroots. Winning isn't everything, but losing is where blame game begins. Okay, so this is the thing. They always say, as long as we are winning, we're okay. No, as I mentioned, even if you're winning, you need to have some impact assessment with the kids, especially when you lose. So that one, and then it's pretty self-explanatory. Then again, interaction. Again, there will always be contact. There will always be hard labor. Do not let your kids to be spoiled. There will always be someone better. That one should be a realistic goal for everyone because you don't need to compare, but there will always come, someone will come better. It's a reality. Balance time. This is a common problem for playing. So there are systems, there are tournaments which are trying to limit, for example, dribbling at grassroots level. No dribbling allowed. No steal allowed. So at least you foster passing and running of everyone. And they try to do like a pastoral system, like first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, different sets of kids. So at least everyone gets touches. There's also, I want to mention this, but 2 years ago, we tried to promote, Coach Louis also tried to promote with me, 8-on-8, 8 versus 8. What do we mean by 8 versus 8? Not 8 on the court at the same time, only 5 at the court, but only 3 substitute. Why? Because usually, even if in professional leagues, you can see that their bench, the depth chart is only up to 8 players. The others are just utilities. So usually, unless someone gets injured. So it's basically just 8. So and NBA, by the way, did the 5-on-5 in China, 5v5. It's just 5 players, no substitution. So it's for at least for a quarter. So it's something that you need to plan ahead, and because it solves the playing time problem, because you want as much people to play, but you cannot, of course, you cannot compromise winning or at least performing well in the tournament. So those are things that you can do. Now, okay, Let's go with parents versus coaches for grassroots. So again, this is management. This is not part of the X and O's on the court. This is important. The first one, they must be seen and believed and trusted by the parents. Without trust, cannot do anything without this thing. Now, how to establish, coach, about this one? Maybe if you're a PBA player, then you try to do not necessarily. I heard many parents say that they try to enroll in a certain famous person camp. The famous person only attended the first opening, and then you have all the assistant coaches doing it for 3 months, and then went back for the awarding of certificate. But his name is on the logo. So for me, it's like they maybe use the name to get the camp. So and sometimes they still do train like every day, but the way they train is not coaching style. The way they train is more of like a player, still the player mindset, demonstrating players' movements. Because it's very different when a coach talks to you on what to do and a player talks to you, or a professional player talks to you on what to do. There's a bit difference with use of language. We'll discuss it on the last. I put it on the last, the use of language. Now, this one, parents versus coaches. Any discussion with playing time, player development, game decisions must be done maturely, not behind the coach's back. Do not embarrass in front of parents. Discipline, best measure of performance for a parent for his or her kid. Your values and all this, pretty much self-explanatory. Now, in the instance that the coach need to be reprimanded, approach the coach first. Don't approach other parents, your kid, the school manager. Talk to the coach first. So as a coach, when you have your system, be open with your parents and tell them that, hey, you can contact me anytime. You don't need to ask your number from the, let's have coffee, let's talk about this. And you will be surprised. Most parents want to be involved. If you give them opportunities to get involved. Usually they have opinions of their own. As coaches, you need to respect them even if they don't play the game. As coaches, we are also guilty. We will always say, why are you saying this to me? You don't even play. But there's no monopoly of how to raise a kid. It takes a community, right? It takes a village. So that one is the parents versus coaches, but we can go back to this later. Now, this one is, I don't want to use Kobe as an example or Gigi or all this. This is a very good example because it's messy. So when this was posted in, I don't know which European newspaper. So this one is copied and pasted by so many coaches, because this one is like a perfect example of how to raise your kid in a group system. If it's a play group, they play. You don't really matter as a parent. You just support the coach. Imagine I can say top 3 player. If you don't want to go with who's the best player, can say top 3 player currently, and he's just letting other coaches coach their kids. So this is a good what you call this? Good thing to emulate. And in the Philippines, because it's so competitive and basketball is so ingrained in our system, that everyone has their own thing of what to do. So as long as we can control and everything is for the betterment of the kid, parents and coaches, we can have mutual respect and understanding. Now, parents versus kids. This one, we as coaches are out of this one. But this is a problem, usual problem for grassroots. Kids having problems with their parents. So 2 things, maybe the parents want the kid to continue, but the kid doesn't want to anymore. Or the kids want to continue, but their parents, they don't want to support them. Something like this. So communication is key. So, okay, I'll move on from this. Now, how to become a good sport parent. What I did when this presentation, I made with Coach Dave in Bacolod, but maybe only 50% of this. And then I went to Bulacan, the private school association here. I was invited also in Iloilo government, the sports office. I also did this with Thailand. This is where all the coaches like, coach, can I get a copy of this? Of course, you can get this on the internet. You can create your own. But see, the problem is, as coach, you always focus on the kid. You are not even telling the parent what you ask of them, what you ask. And for me, as adults, you need to talk to the parents first. before the kids, especially in a grassroots setting. So how to become better parents, just self-explanatory. So this one, attend regular games. By the way, that one on the right side, third to the last. Attend regular games because it means a lot to kids. Now, there are others who will say, Coach, if the parents come, the kids feel pressured. Yes, because in sports, pressure is always there. You can play in a big arena, you can play in your backyard, but they should learn how to handle pressure. And if they watch and they see that their kid is on the bench, for example, then how do we deal with that one? As a coach, you don't need to be like, hey, your parent is watching, I'll put you inside. It's actually worse because parents know if their kids are good or bad. And if you're just trying to be patronizing with them, and not talk to them, you just, just this action for you is like a charity. It actually spells more problem. So better to just talk and then tell the parents that, I'm sorry for this one, he's not playing, blah, 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 and all this. But adults will understand. And you can ask the parent in himself to help explain the kid why they are not playing, or something like that. Now, kids versus coaches. So what do you do if there's a problem kid? Usually you kick him out of the team, right? So, but again, the problem is if it's a grassroots program, you cannot choose your kids. It's like, for example, 50 kids from the school, 100 kids from the school. You can choose to who makes your team, the team that goes to the competition. But the pool of kids who are joining or learning basketball, I don't think it's fair for you to turn down anyone just because of their skill level, or maybe for you just because you anticipate that there will be a problem with this kid. Because once you give up on him, then it's like saying to him that he's hopeless. So what do we do? So for this one, it's a very adult thing to do. Just never humiliate him in front of other kids. If you do that and you try to talk to them more privately, they will open up to you. And I experienced this so many times with kids that I only met for the first time. I met him or her for the first time, spent 1-2 minutes maximum. Then then suddenly they were adding me on Instagram or Facebook, asking me for advice and all this. I'm not even there for like more than 2 hours in their school, but that's the impact that you can create. So, this one, praise and call out, short, clear words. Okay, I give you an example. Hey, that's wrong. But you didn't even say what's right. You just say it's wrong. And when the kid is lost, you think that the kid's stupid. Actually, no, because your instruction was stupid. You just say what's wrong. You don't even tell him what to do right. So if you praise, there's a rule that I do. I shout praises only. When I shout, I only shout good job or nice or something very, very positive. When I want to say something bad, I try to whisper it as silently as possible that only the kid will hear, or maybe 2 or 3 kids will hear. Because words are very, very, it lasts. They will always remember the words that you say. Now, do's and don'ts. Okay, this very, very self-explanatory. Now, this one from John Wooden, I think one of the most famous basketball coaches ever. So this is important because some kids, they just play not to make mistakes. They don't even try to create. They just try to do as much as possible what the coach tells them to do. If that's the case, they should join the military, not sports. Because if sports, they're actually more important than the coach. What they do inside is more important. So should be like this. Now, okay. Now, parents versus parents. So if parents versus parents, there should be no arbiter. You cannot say some parent is wrong, the other is wrong, because both of them are wrong. Once they start banging heads, both of them are wrong. Doesn't matter who started it. Both of them are wrong because we are all here for the kids, for our children. Sometimes children are best friends, but their parents are fighting in the grassroots setup. So don't choose a side, and you just talk to the parents themselves. Okay? And don't involve other parents. Okay. Now, for parents versus other parents, they always only cheer for their kids. You know, what happens is like this. If when they come to watch your team play and the coach doesn't talk to the parents, they will think that they only come there for their kids. So what I try to do when I'm teaching head coaches to manage the stands, you know, the ones behind them, is before the start of the game, talk to all the parents that they're, you know, thank you for coming, you're all here to watch our team, blah, blah, blah. Now, at the beginning, it already dissolves the notion that you're just there to watch your kid play. You're there for the team. You're supporting the team. And it's this matter of management with all this outside your job as a coach is what makes the grassroots program lasting and not just very temporary. Now, kids versus kids, of course, everyone has this. So just monitor unruly behavior, bullying, physical abuse, anything. You need to be very watchful. Not because a kid is silent, it means he's passive. Sometimes he's just more controlled, more, more civil. He was taught by his parents not to create trouble and all this, but you need to talk to them. You need to acknowledge that what they are feeling or what they are feeling against the other kids are correct, and how they manage it is good. Because without acknowledging what they're feeling, what will happen is they just keep it inside and they will not talk to anyone, and it's a problem. So try to mingle, try to create bonds. So when we are doing training, when we do training, we always try to pair them with their least compatible partner. So we try as much to pair someone who's not their classmates, for example, because usually when you say, "Oh, I group together, 5-on-5," they will always just go towards their friends. So that's not sports. We're trying to build camaraderie. So if you need to intervene, you can say like this: "Okay, everyone, find a group of 5." So they all went to their groups. Now that's not your team. What you do now, you need to create another group of 5 without someone in your current team. And then they will say, "Oh, coach," but they will still follow you. But now you already know that the next team that they will create is a mixture of everything. That is where communication among them, leadership comes in, joy and fun. Because it's, of course, fun to play with your friends, but you cannot always just play with your friends. Sports is encompassing. We try to accommodate as much as possible, especially in grassroots. So yeah, that's it. Now, that's part 2. So basically, that's the interaction part in grassroots. There are so many coaches. When after this one, there's actually a workshop. I just removed the slide. The workshop is list 5 things, specific things that you happen to experience in your team. Like people cannot list 5. They want to list 20. Like, "Coach, I have a player." They even say, "This player is the son of the cousin of the team owner," something like that. And then this wants to fire my assistant because like very specific example. But see, when we have this workshop and the coach himself try to list down his problems, the first thing that you do after you list it down is to acknowledge that there's a problem to be solved. Without the workshop, they will just say, "Oh, it's okay. Nothing happened, nothing bad happened, so let's just let it pass." No, if you acknowledge it and right there and then try to act on it, it's even better rather than just to let everything pass. So now, if you have questions, this is the last part, by the way.
Yeah, question lang, Coach.
Yes, Coach.
Regarding dun sa situation ng management about the team, because
Yes,
I that all the slides and everything is really helpful. But let me ask you something. What is actually, like you said, there's no right and there's no wrong. But in the situation, because what happened to the Chicago Bulls team, remember?
yes,
And the
Coach.
management clashed to the coaches and players. So that sometimes there's a barrier of those two things, playing and managing.
Yes,
So you almost the clash of the dynasty
yes,
went down because of that. case. So in gas, it comes to our grassroots as well. Kasi there are some games and teams, like especially when you're managing a grassroots, you have like about 5 division, like you said, 14U, 12U, 16U. Sometimes when you have a strong, powerful 14U, all of a sudden they will say, you know what, we can create our own team. We don't need the management to do that for us. So sometimes even though how structured you are and how developed, organized your management is, sometimes when this comes politically from
Yes.
so is there any prevention for that, or it's just like it is what it is?
Okay. So where you're coming from, coach, is American style. I think that's what the Philippine style is almost exactly a copy of, although we don't have clubs here. But for example, in Indonesia, because they have a club system. So the club system, for example, I'm a player, I'm an elementary player. I enroll in this club. If I choose to transfer to a different club, create my own team or whatever, I need to ask permission from this club. If
There's a
they
rule.
don't release my if they don't release my papers, then I cannot play for the other club. Now, if you say, coach, that's disadvantageous. No, because you should write to the club, and then there's an arbitrary community within the region, because the federation license all the clubs, and all these coaches have licenses. You cannot coach without a license. Unlike in the Philippines, anyone can coach, but in those areas there's a licensing system. So what happens is they license the coaches, they also license the club. Now the school, you can transfer to different school, it's no problem because it's up to you. But when you compete for the club, and usually the club is where it goes up to the professional, because the club system that they have is for youth, that's 18 below, and they also have 21 above and 35 above. So you can actually stay in one club for the rest of your life, and you can play on different divisions until you go pro or semi-pro. You can get sponsorships and all this. So your loyalty belongs to the club. You can transfer club, you just need to ask permission, but it defeats the notion that you are here for your own thing. For example, I'm good, I can create my own, I can just jump from this program to the other program. If there's a system like that in place, it also solves, coach, some poaching problem. In grassroots, the poaching of coaches is a prevailing problem here in the Philippines. Because also the problem is the grassroots system is not too strong, that the kids themselves or the parents, they don't believe that their kid will be maximized in this program. So what they want to do is to transfer their kid to a higher program. That's where we are. I've been in talks with the federation and also with BCAP and other groups, is if there's a grassroots base level, meaning all coaches are equipped to teach this level, you go anywhere, you hear the same thing, because that's what they do in clubs abroad. They have a handbook of what they need to teach, at least for the grassroots level. So the kids or the parents, they will always think that I don't really need to go so much farther because the potential for this is the same as the potential in other places. Maybe the only thing is economic. Maybe if the other team will give you some more privilege, some more money, some more allowance. But beyond that one, the skill level is the same. And why do I say like that? If you cannot make a rule of a club, and you cannot make that, oh, you need permission to transfer from one club to the other, maybe you can strengthen the grassroots system, that the parents themselves, they believe that when they enroll in this club, they will produce a good individual afterwards. I don't need to transfer him to a different club. The only way they want to transfer, I'm talking about grassroots first, is if they think that their kid already plateau in this club. So that's why what you need is open communication with the parents, that there's a practice plan, there's a practice program for your kid. You can even create a separate for him if he's really your very, very good product. But as coaches in the Philippines, they always think of it as an investment. For example, you have this exodus from a certain school in Sampaloc going to our school and other school in Taft. And it's like a very huge news why the juniors is not going straight to the seniors and they transferring out. Of course, there's rumors about some problem with coaching staff there from where they were, and also some offers and all this. But to be honest, if you're a player, you feel where you will grow. If you really think that you will grow elsewhere, there's no one to stop you. So there's no rule that will prevent you. You can just throw away your game and enforce your management to kick you out and trade you. Like what NBA players are doing. If they demand the trade, they just, I don't care, you trade me or I will not play properly, something like that. But what I'm saying is, especially for example, the last dance of Michael Jordan, there was a problem with their manager. I think that's what you're referring to. Professionals are very different because they work under a contract. So they can think for themselves, meaning if this for me is best way to go, I have lawyers, I have all this management, I have friends who I can ask for a good decision. But in the grassroots setting, if there's poaching, if there's doctoring of birth certificates and all this just to make the club win, something like that.
What about the situation of Richie Rivero from from UP, from LaSalle?
Okay, coach. So because you asked, so
because I mean, we're just removing from the professional. Now we go to amateur.
Okay, coach. Okay, so for university, for example, so Richie is an all-star. He went to LaSalle. Yes, so he went to LaSalle with his brother also. So both of them, they joined junior NBA. So when they joined LaSalle, there's a program involved. Then UP out of nowhere has some influx also of funding also. In a sense of sponsorship, and you can clearly see it on the uniforms and all this. But it's not the best example of how to recruit players, because without a winning program, players will not go to your school, even if you have the money to spend. You need to have a winning program or maybe a winning coach or a winning tradition. For the longest time, UP has been losing like straight, like 0-14, 0-14, 0-14. Now the question is, why the transfer? Okay.
But will you say, coach, that the management is getting better now from before? Because like before, the players wasn't there. So it means to say the management has to strengthening their core too. But now they're having the players. So maybe the back end, there's some decision that's being made from the management.
Coach. And also, not just that, I think what speaks well, although some coaches may disagree very vehemently against what I'm going to say next. High school, they always say, it's not connected to college. Because maybe your school, for example, I want to be an engineer, and the best school for engineering for the longest time may be Mapua, for example. So I'm a UAAP player. I want to transfer to Mapua to study because I want electronics engineering, something like that. So college and high school is very different. But we all know that in the basketball setting, I'm not talking about other sports, just men's basketball. You get to your college in the beginning because of your skill level. It's not really about your degree or what course you want to take. So because some kids will say, or some press release will say, and this is just me talking, okay? I don't know if someone will quote me or anything, but just me personally. They will always say, no, I chose this course and that course is not available in my old school. I want to transfer. For me, it's like, do you buy that? I will, and they will always say that I'm high school and I want to go to a university that also fosters education and all this. So this is where it happens, coach. If the player thinks that even during his grassroots, he can choose his school. For example, I'll give an example. I'm Richie Rivera, for example. Or I'm Coach Mel. I'm Coach Mel, Mel Villanueva. I'm a blue chip recruit. 5 schools choosing or battling for me. I choose one school. After 2 years, I'm not happy. So that's why in the back of my head, in that 2 years, what I'm only thinking of is what this school can give me, because I chose this school over 4 other schools. So for the longest time I was playing, I'm not thinking of the team. I'm thinking of what they can offer to me. So the next best offer, I just jump. So if your grassroots program is not up to that structure or not open, like this is the most you can get, cannot give you more. Maybe some other new recruits will get more because your system before, the contract that we signed was like this. And maybe also there's another factor. Maybe they hear that the recruitment team in the other school is offering better, not to him, but to the other new recruits. And they just want to float their names, float their names that they can be picked. So for me, it's like the culture of that one stems not just from individual players, but it's also where managers are actually, for me, a bit questionable. For grassroots or for high school players to have a manager is like a bit on the offside, because you are a high school student because primarily you're a student. So if the school is providing for you free education and all this, you're given, all these niceties, and you want to transfer, I think for a kid, just for a kid alone, without parents or anything, you will not know what the other school will offer unless you entertain a thought of people talking to you. So now the solution of coaches is, every time someone talks to you, give my number. Don't talk to anyone, even if they're your friends and all this. I have personal experience. All-star players from junior NBA, we need to engage them in some form of activities for the program. When I approach them, they know me very well. Kuya, they call me Kuya, cannot talk to you. Maybe you talk to my mom or you talk to our coach. See, at that age, 14, they already know that they have a manager that people need to talk to. So it's a matter of culture also. But I'm saying those are maybe the Manila players. But I know, especially in the province, there are so many kids who are just so happy to get scholarships. Even just to get scholarships is so nice for them already. That's why they're so happy and loyal to their school. But I cannot say for everyone, especially for example, Manila programs or Manila teams. So hopefully in the future, maybe the league, for example, the UAP can create some form of rules about this. They already have rules on allowances and all this, but of course there's things under, I think you understand what I'm saying. But you can only send, they always say like these rules are meant to be broken, right? That's why we always say that culture will last longer than the rule. So if you have a culture and ingrained in you, then then you will be loyal to that idea. So the earlier you start, and just hope for the best, maybe.
So, Coach, I'm really sorry.
Yes, Coach.
There are a lot of questions, I know.
Sure.
But I'm sorry, guys, because it's just a thing that this kind of topic is really more to my program, especially the sports management.
Yes, Coach.
So, I mean, it get through too long. So I guess.
And also, Coach, I answered very, very long.
But
Coach
okay.
Mel, I don't want to get in trouble with Coach Ariel. we need a part two. We need a part two, okay?
Coach, just one more time. So what do you think what happened to the basketball from before and now? Does it get because of this NBA? Because remember back the day, we have loyalties from the Philippines basketball, from UE, Alan Kaidik, they came from UE. All of them started no shifting of school, winning the championship from the grassroots. Even in the NBA, Magic Johnsons, nobody left. All of a sudden, then Shaquille O'Neal. And then all of a sudden now, our young players doing the same. And then, I don't know, is it getting worse, or are we need to go back to the grassroots format, like the way we're trying to discuss our management?
Yeah. So two answers to that one, Coach. The first one is the difference is now it's more commercial. The UAP is one of the most business savvy marketing group because I was part of the media coordination team 2008 to 2012. So they really cash on marketing. And when the brands come in and they're inputting money, it doesn't necessarily need to be with the team. Meaning they don't really care who the players are. We just want our names to be on the league, because UAAP has like hundreds of thousands, millions of people watching, because all the alumni of the school will always watch. So that's where it started. With the influx of all these business opportunities, it now goes to the team system. Even the team now is influenced, I can say influenced by by sponsorships. So when the sponsorships come in, that's where the influence need to happen. So will it be management side, coaches side, or the player side? But usually in the Philippines, because coaches here are very easy to fire. I think you know that, right, coach? Like if you lose, you're out. And people who are not really in the management, they always like say something bad. When you win, they all with you. When you lose, they all want your head out. So the culture of winning is good before, because before it's just winning. Now it's winning plus the business side. I'm going to give an example. If winning and business go together, how come those schools with not too much winning record still get sponsorships? Because they still want to be part of the league. So now it's just a matter of how to manage all these sponsors that are coming in. So if you're a good team, maybe you can demand more and you can ask more from your players also, or your management. If you're a smaller team, you're just happy to have your scholarships or your sponsorships with you. I think that's the primary shift, the primary change. Now, in terms of emulation, we all know that players are loyal. You know, the older players of our generation compared to now. It's a good and it's a bad thing. It's a good thing because now players have more control over their career, because it's their body, to be honest. It's their body. I mean, you can say that this team molded them and all this, but it's still their body. There's the ultimate decision maker of what they need to do with their careers. But the disadvantage of that one, if there's no limit to what they can do, then now they become bigger than the league or bigger than the team. That's why I think if you want to watch, if you want to emulate other systems, again, as I mentioned, a club system is another thing that you can use, because the club, you need to start from below going up, and then you're proud of your club more than like where you can go next. It's more of like establishing this thing. You can just be the best player in your club and you'll be okay with that, because you still get your salary, you still get everything, and you're a best player in your club. But in the NBA or more commercial leagues, even in the Philippines, like PBA and all this, you can have your private endorsements on your side. So you have your own personal manager. So I think for me, professionally, it's okay. But for the grassroots, I don't think it's helping. Personal managers, I don't think it's helping. You can be a team manager. You worry about the whole team, not individual players that you are trying to sell to other schools.
Thank you, Coach. Thank you, Coach. We can now proceed, Coach, to our part 3.
Okay, Coach. So this one, grassroots sports management. So I mentioned 3, 4, 5, 6, I think 8. Yeah. Movement and benchmarking, nutrition, training equipment, training schedule, cross-training, training do's and don'ts, tournament do's and don'ts, and communication. So for grassroots, you assumingly train for the whole year. The tournament maybe during the summer, or maybe once during the school year, during foundation week, intramurals and all this. But usually you train the whole year. This grassroots program is actually good because at least the kids have activities for the whole year, not just seasonal. It keeps them sticking to the practice plan that you create. The only problem with that one, if it's a whole year, you need to be very creative on what you do, because you cannot just do the same thing over and over again. The kids at this level of age will get bored. So now these are the things that you need to manage. So we start first with the movement. So physiological and kinetics requirements. So for grassroots, they need to learn to move first before how. So when you teach them, for example, dribbling, they need to be able to run first. Run first. That's the first one. And then run fast. That's the second one. And then maybe you use your arm to dribble. And then you make different types of dribbles. So it's like a progression. But if they cannot run, that's up to you, coach, to make them be able to run. So I give Coach Dave, maybe I can use Josh as an example. So I went to Bacolod. So Coach Dave's son, Josh, was there. So I asked them first, and I always do this training everywhere I go. You run, I time you. So he run. Then the next one, you chase Josh. Sorry. Now, Josh chased this other person, try to tap him, you run. Immediately, the spike, the fast, how fast he went was significant enough for me to think that he can even go faster with proper training, because I didn't do anything. I didn't train him on anything. It's just a 5-second difference between his first run and the next run. But you try to change something in how they move and teach them how to motivate themselves, and it spells the difference. Now from there, there's what we call the base level. Okay, now this guy can run. This guy can run fast. So the guys who can run, we make them faster. And those who run fast, we make them even maybe change direction or do something else. So there's like a level of progression. You cannot just go jump in and then, okay, all of you 10 years old, you need to be able to run 10 seconds, or you need to be able to run 10 laps, something like that. There's no what you call this, standard. Now, in other countries, for example, we do the beep test. So I don't know if there are people maybe watching or viewing this. If you're a physical education teacher and you don't know the beep test, I think you need to review. So the beep test is, there's a bell, ping, 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 and then you just need to run, and you just need to reach the end point before the bell sounds, and it becomes faster and faster and faster. Then you just count how many times you can do before you make a mistake. The beep test in the Philippines, they don't do that. When you ask a coach, who's your fastest runner, they don't know. They just know maybe their point guard, maybe. Now, here's the thing. I think it was in the NBA, I think it's Russell Westbrook still. And I forgot the name of the other person. He's actually taller than Russell Westbrook, but he's faster in the 3/4 court sprint, and it's in the NBA database. So doesn't really matter your position in the team. It's your body mechanics. So maybe you're longer, or you stride faster, or in sprints you can be faster, but in the long duration of run, you're slower. But as a coach, where do we start? We cannot say that we will only develop all these as they grow older, because as I said, it's easier if you make a base thing. It's easier if you make them, okay, hold this progress report card. It's like a small card for you. We run today, I time you, and then we run again next month, and then next month. It's easier that way rather than to teach them for a year and then next year we do all the tests. So it's just a matter of organizing them at an early age. So when they go to the next level of age, for example, you're not handling them anymore, they still know that they need to improve and improve. So it's like a report card that they can bring all the way up till their elite. Now, individuals differ, of course. Of course, muscle group, bone structure, DNA factors, all of these are factors. You cannot say that someone is lagging just because he's fatter, because maybe his bone structure is different, something like that. And at grassroots, it's very important because the moment you compare kids from a different, for kids among themselves, then you create division in your team. You create superstars and people who tend to get bullied. So that's not good with grassroots. And multi-sport approach. Usually, we want to teach them, for example, jumping, right? When we want to teach them jumping, we always tell them, okay, you jumping rope, use the skip rope, or you use the vertical measurement. Some studies, and actually it's proven, people who do cross training are better. For example, they do track, or they do volleyball, or they play badminton, because the lunges and all this footwork are faster than basketball, because basketball you can rest. In the other sports, not too much. Tennis, badminton, always on your toes. So now, traditionally, coaches will say, don't ask someone to play volleyball, it will destroy their wrist, something like that. At grassroots level, your wrist is still a malleable clay. You can make it to anything you want. So the more muscle groups that the kid is using, the better he will become. So don't specialize it just because for you think that you're wasting your time practicing other sport when you want basketball right away. So it helps the kid, and it also helps you because you don't need to create practice plan all the time. Because, okay, for this month, we do cross training with this sport. So they learn more sports, more about their body, something like that. Now, benchmarking. So individual scorecards, as I mentioned, performance-based, play system, base level, each individual, not for comparison. It's a basic report card that we in, for example, in Indonesia, we have, I'm always giving Indonesia as an example because the past 2 years, I leave Indonesia more than in Philippines. So there, when I went to the clubs, they invite me to monitor their kids. The way they train is right away, just go to playing. They, of course, they stretch and they do the playing. And then when I ask, okay, who's your best shooter? They will point to someone, okay, she's the best shooter. And then when I ask, which part? Anywhere, coach. Hey, you cannot be the best shooter in all the spots. I mean, maybe yes, maybe you're the best player here, but how do you know? We know, coach, just that she's the better player. So you mean after 2 years, after 3 years, she will always still be the best player or best shooter? So because they don't have any benchmarking, for them it's just play by ear, whatever we see. Now, the benchmarking is the last one, is not for comparison because again, as I said, individuals differ. This is where the benchmarking is, this is why benchmarking is not usually done by coaches, because first it takes a lot of time to benchmark everyone, but it's worth it. Believe me, it's worth it. And maybe they benchmark, but the usual reaction of kids is to compare. What's your score? What's my score? Something like that. That's why if you cannot do and explain benchmarking properly, talk to the parents first. That we will do this. So you can prepare your kids. We give them maybe a month to prepare. Then we do this individual scoring. Parents can come in and help. Because if it's a family style and we just make them play, but we are jotting down their scores, it becomes something of a inspiration for them. Hey, next time I beat you, rather than to compare them. Because if you just deal with them one by one and just let them talk to each other, compare their kids, they will always say something bad to the other person. So you need to control benchmarking also. Not just the actual process, but also the result. What do you do with the result? Now, this is a sample that we do for junior NBA. But this one, I want to show this. I have an Excel sheet of gradual report cards. But this one is good because we use this as the classification for the regional selection camp, whoever goes higher. Because we have thousands of kids. So how do you do that in a day, for example? How do you, the record in Philippines, I think is 1,500 in Butuan, one day. So how do you process all of those? So we started 2008 when we started using this score sheet. There's so many things to measure, but we chose this one. It changes over a couple of years. Like for example, the shooting, before we tried to do the shooting like a 3-point shot, 3-point competition, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, so 15 shots. Now, we say, why are we emphasizing 3-point shots? Better you put points in different parts of the court, let the kid decide where they want to shoot. Because some kids are training close range, some kids are training 3-point shots, it's up to them. And then, so it's like changing every time. Even the passing, we try to change it, make it more adjustable. But if they have this and they have their score and they keep it, and then every time you try to change it, it's a good badge for them. It's like a belt, you know, like a black belt in karate, a white belt, brown belt, it's something like that. Now, sports nutrition in grassroots, this is very important. It's not really how hard you train, it's what you do after training. So I have so many grassroots coaches, they're already doing the weights, they're already doing all this like cardio thing for kids. And the kids, after 2 hours of training, they're like, oh, so tired. For me, it's okay, no problem, because you're trying to stress the kid. It's called stress training. But when I ask, so what do they eat after? Oh no, coach, they just go home and eat. No, because your muscle develop after you train. It's not when you do 100 push-ups, your muscle will not develop because of the 100 push-ups. You will develop because after your 100 push-ups done and your sweat and everything is burned, whatever you put inside next after your training is what builds the muscle. So, oh, we didn't know, coach. See, that's the thing. You just spend the energy of the kid. You're not even building. That's why you can see the kids, they think that as they grow slimmer, it's better because they're losing muscle density. That's not good. So this is basic sports nutrition, because as you grow elite, the control for the food becomes higher. And some supplementation and all this, some protein shakes and all this. But for the, at least for the grassroots, we are not proposing too much expensive stuff. That's why I didn't put any expensive stuff because, for example, in other countries, Coach Mel knows this, and maybe Coach Eric also in the US, but in Indonesia, for example, fruits very, very cheap. Like you can get a kilo of mango for 20 pesos. So I can recommend mangoes, but here in the Philippines, if you recommend mangoes, that's like 80 pesos, 100 pesos per kilo. That's like almost fish. So if I'm a parent, I'd rather buy fish for the whole family than mango just for you. So you need to balance it as a coach. You don't need to tell your team, especially if you know where they're coming from, things that is unrealistic for them. I can say, okay, eat steak. After your training today, everyone eats steak. You know how much steak here is per gram? So it's very different depending on where you're coming from. So for the sports nutrition, it's the meals and the timing. Sugar, fat, protein role. This is very important. You cannot just say, oh, too much sugar, too much fat. I'll explain just a bit later. Sports drinks, home prepared snacks, and meal plan. If you notice, all these are very simple because we're dealing with grassroots only. So I'll just go ahead and for this one, sports nutrition. For example, sports drinks. For the sports drink, I'll explain. I know we have sponsors, for example, the G brand, very, very good sponsor. We also have like the one from Coke. We have Apocari Sweat and all this. I've heard of many of their presentation. So for this one, I got it from the scientific perspective, not the product perspective. So for science, when you drink something, the more sugar it has, the longer it will stay in your stomach. So all this, that's why they always say when you drink sugary stuff, Coke and all this, you feel bloated. It's not because of the carbonated air. It's more of because your stomach feels full because it doesn't release it to the intestine because it's still sugar. And if you go back to the science during elementary days, the absorption of nutrients happen in the intestines, not in the stomach. Stomach is breaking down of the food. So if you're drinking sugary substance, it's hard to break it down. So it just stays in your stomach and you don't absorb anything because it doesn't go to your intestines. And it's where the nutrient absorption is. So sports drinks, usually they balance it. They put not too much sugar, so it goes straight to your stomach, nothing to digest, goes straight to your intestine. Now, the salt, I'm not talking about the table salt, the salty one. Salt meaning like, the magnesium, the potassium, and all these. Now they optimize the salt because if high salt content in your intestine, what happens is to create homeostasis, your blood will absorb everything from the small intestine to make it like a high concentration of salt in your intestine goes outside. So if that's the case, you need to make it optimally with salt so it is absorbed faster than if you just drink water, for example, or if you just drink something with sugar. So how important is that information just by drinking alone? Because we drink fruit juice. Fruit juice is very high in sugar, fructose. It's not glucose, it's fructose. It stays in your stomach long. It's okay to drink juice, but you need to drink it way, way before the start of the activity. So by the time you're doing the activity, it's already being absorbed by your body. Don't drink it like 10 minutes before the activity. It doesn't help you. It just makes you bloated. So something like this. Now say, Coach, we're a bit poor. Our grassroots program is just water. It's okay. You can make your water taste a bit more better. Put some what you call this, some sprinkle of juice there, like extract of make something like at least with some vitamins inside. You can buy some powder for protein, some powder for carbohydrate. Now, I'll explain the next one, fluid replacement. So there's 3 types of drinks, okay? So you have the fluid replacement. These are the normal, the Gatorade and all this. They replace using electrolytes. There's the other one, which is the carbohydrate and protein replacement. This is very important for triathletes, for example, because the triathletes, they burn so much calories because their workout is, or their training, everything they do is longer. A basketball game or a training, maybe 1 hour, 2 hours. A triathlon, 6 hours maybe, and different field. They swim, they run. So they need carbohydrate and protein replacement. So it's not just the electrolytes that they lose. They need to have calorie intake. But they cannot eat, right? So they just need to drink. That's why what they drink has calories also. If you notice with the Fluid replacement, no calories involved because your calorie is enough. But the other one, the one with the carbohydrate, with the protein, that's the next level one, that's more for elite. Then the last one is the energy boost. This is your Sting, your Cobra, and all this. It's sugar. If there's sugar and caffeine, there's a spike in energy with you. So I think everyone knows that. So those three things that you think, if you don't pay attention, you do the training, suddenly you can see some of the kids drinking soda, some of the kids drinking fruit juice, some of the kids drinking Cobra, Sting, and all this. You need to control those because their performance and everything, the habit that they will form, you can influence. So at least the thing that they drink, you can talk to them about it or talk to the parents about it. And of course, you can enroll in more nutrition-based research on this, but at least for the sports drink, I suggest go for the electrolytes replacement because your training is smaller than normal teams, or just do water with some additives on it. You don't really need calorie replacement anyway. And the next one is the meal. So that one is the drink, this one is the meal. So pre-meal, the second is pre-meal, is for burning. It's 3 to 2 hours before the activity. Make sure they eat 3 to 2 hours before, not right before, because they need to absorb the nutrients. And for post, to build muscles, they need to do it immediately after training, 1 to 2 hours after activities, what they usually call carbo loading for pre-carbo loading. And then what's the term they use? I forgot. I forgot something about the post. The pre one is what they call carbo loading, because carbohydrates is the easiest to burn. After carbohydrates is proteins. After proteins, fats. So for post, they call it for muscle building. So 1 to 2 hours after the activity. So this one is something that they can start at an early age, how to discipline eating. You can train as much as you want, but it's really what you intake. It's really more important than your actual training. That's why they always say, even the boxers, they diet. They control their intake, especially coming into a fight, because what you intake is more important, to be honest, than the actual training itself. So especially at grassroots, they're developing. Again, for example, calcium. Everyone will say, okay, drink milk. Two schools of thought. When you drink too much calcium and it's not really absorbed, it just goes to your poop. But there's another thing. It also makes your bones denser, stronger. But we all know that the more dense your bone is, the less length it will have. So the notion that if you drink milk, you grow taller, is not really true. When you drink milk, your bones become stronger. Doesn't really pull it. So what do? We drink milk plus you do training for extending your bones. Without the training, your bones will just be very dense, which is still good, but the thing is you didn't maximize your growth spurt. So drinking milk alone is not enough. You need to couple it with training that's specific for height, at least for jumping or for length. And I'm lacking that. I'm very short. But in my family, I'm the tallest. So now this one, simple problems in grassroots. You have fatigue. What may be the cause and what we can do nutritionally? Of course, you can be fatigued because you did something at home or you didn't sleep, but nutritionally, what we can do? Because before applying medicine for grassroots, before giving them prescription on what to drink medically, maybe nutritionally is better, just food. Muscle cramps, inability to gain mass, inability to lose fat. So it's just a basic combination of things like this. Now, next, training schedule and equipment. It must be precise. Extra training, it's up to you. It may be going into the tournament, maybe you do extra training, but muscle recovery, need time for them to recover their strength. Equipment must be readily available, but doesn't need to be costly. I know there's so many camps that when they promote their camp, they display all this like a standing man like this, the jumping hoops like this. It looks very, very pro, like very commercial. But you can do away with those. If your school or your community doesn't really have that much budget, you can really make away. For example, okay, I always do like this. If You know the shooting form. Okay, when you practice shooting form, all you need is to practice this one with the weight. It just needs to have some weight. Because if you just do like this, there's nothing because there's no weight. So what do we do? So while waiting, I always ask is, okay, get maybe bottle of anything. Just hold it like this. Just go like this. It doesn't help with your grip because the grip is wrong, but your wrist. So you're just training your wrist. This is not like, doesn't cost anything. But at least you're, instead of just them sitting there, you do something with them. So, and they like make it playful. Like they can even do like passing the, so it's like just training their wrist with some form of resistance. Okay. Now, emphasis on form, muscle memory, repetition. So everyone, you already know this. Now, I'm showing some stuff because we can say that this one you can replicate or you can make a homemade version, and then the other ones are like, you don't really need to do. So contact pads, you can make it from anything. You can make it from a foam, and then for the D-man, the defense, you can make a stick, you can make a mop, just make something with height. Agility ladder, you can just draw on the floor. And then these are some of the cool looking, but the purpose is there, but you can replicate this. For example, the gloves. Those gloves are the non-stick gloves. So meaning there's no grip. So you need really to have strong fingers to control the ball. Now, the other one on the left side is what you use for manicure and pedicure, but it just to space out your fingers, not to make it like this. So if you don't, maybe you do something else. For example, when they're sleeping, put something in between. So it just helps it, the very passive. You don't need to buy this stuff, but if you can, you have the budget, just try. The parachute thing, you can just do, instead of air resistance, have someone pull them at the back. So it's cheaper, less maintenance also. And this one, the one with the ball, is like a stick that you need to dribble under it. So 2 levels. So it's like a high one and the low one. So you can even just use a stick. Ask a partner, hold the stick, make it lower, make it higher, and then just make them play. Now, do it yourself training at home. Now, this is a focus of Grassroots right now. So when I did this talk a couple of months ago, they asked me for some tips on what to do. So jump rope always, because it's what you call this, endurance also. Dribbling and passing, it depends. You can use the wall for the pass, or you can have a partner at home if they have. Leap box or stairs, stair climbers. Plank sit-ups, no problem with those. Push-ups, there's also no equipment. Lunges, there's so many things that they can do. If you notice, I didn't put anything about stretching, but it's a given that they need to stretch before all of this. So you can even tell them to incorporate this into their warm-ups also, stretching. Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We do it like this. The 5 minute is the most easiest one, going down to the hardest. And plank still the hardest one because their core is not yet developed. You can develop the other equipment with other stuff, but if you notice, the core is always the last thing to be developed because running, push-ups, shooting, everything involves your limbs. What about your core? So your core is always the one left out. So we put the plank in there. You can change it. You can make it harder also if you want. Now, cross-training. Some, they have facilities, so they can do swimming, they do dance, they do weights, they do yoga. It's very, very beneficial in terms of creativity. Especially now we have, this TikTok phenomenon and all this video. You can use those to your advantage and make them do Zumba and all this. It helps their movements and their joints to always be moving. We don't want them to always, their joints to always memorize, only dribble this way. We want their joints to be very supple and can do many things. Now, multiple sports. So from the findings, even with NBA study, 14 below, we are not advising them to specialize in one sports only. Minimum 2. If they cannot do 3, 2, but as many as they can. It helps with the development, the proper development of their whole body first. because the skills you can teach later, but the way they carry their body is important. Now, training do's and don'ts. So for training, this is the time they can try new equipment, new shoes, everything. Be comfortable with mistakes. Always do game speed when asked. This is another thing. In training, some kids, I notice when it's not game situation, for example, it's just set a screen and then bounce pass like a warm-up drill, pre-game shootout style. They don't really do it game speed. There's a pro and con to that. The pro is they reserve their energy. The con is they develop bad habits. So you can tell them the percentage. We always use percentage now. Okay, 30%, 30%. They already know how to pace themselves. At least the whole team knows. Not like one person giving it 100%, then the others giving it only 50. Should be one and the same. And avoid injury, always warm up and cool down. This is very important. It happens to us many, many times. Kids are not paying attention to the warm up or to the stretching, and they pay the price, especially, for example, in a selection camp. So imagine they're just used to being trained 30 minutes, 1 hour, and then the selection camp is 3 days straight of like 4 hours every day. So if your body is not used to that stress, even if you're the best player, your body will give way. Then there's no shortcuts. Try to finish everything. Even, for example, there's a running game, relay game. One team is already done, finish. We always finish. Don't like, okay, they already win. It's not about that. You need to finish. So, and then for parents, this is another, I'm guilty of this one. Sometimes I forget water breaks. Now, in grassroots before, the tradition is water break for everyone at the same time. We do that because we need to reset, for example, reset the cones on the court and all these, make them go water break. But in real situation, it's better to just make them go on their own. The training goes straight, they can drink on their own because you also need to stress them out. At the grassroots level, we are training them on a game situation or a long duration of stress. They need to be able to control their breathing. They need to be able to control their fluid intake. And if they are urinating during the training, it's actually bad, meaning they drink too much before the actual activity. So that one we also need to control. Because maybe they think if I drink too much before, I will have more power during the game. It doesn't work like that. So what you do is you need to drink normally. That's it. If you feel thirsty, you drink because your body has its own mechanism of telling you what to do. Because some coaches, for example, if you make them do water break for everyone, what if the kid is not thirsty? Now he needs to drink because everyone is drinking. Now he just go to pee. So it's not good. So nutrition-wise, it's also not good. Now, tournaments, aside from training, the tournaments, we're almost down to the last 2 slides. For the tournaments, this is different from training. No new equipment, no new shoes, nothing new. The tournament is just an extension of your training. So if you're doing something a bit of a team, not just the grassroots now, the team going to a tournament, we usually train harder than the actual game. So in the actual game, it just slows down. And then no coaching from the sideline, from the parents, no unnecessary pressure, give athlete the space, cheer, don't jeer, of course, and exemplify values. So that's it for the tournaments. There's a guideline for the meals before and after. Now, this one, I got it from the Healthy Children Organization, from the Pediatrics Association. So I have their manual, but it's too long. So I just got some infographics with them. So asking questions, it really matters. It fosters communication and bolster their confidence. Now, the last one is communication. I put it the last because this one is my degree or my background is more on communication. So it is not what you know or you heard it from, but how you say it. Because kids will zone you out. They will not listen to you if you're just rambling and rambling, even if you're the best coach or you heard it from the best experience ever. It's really how you talk. Sometimes you make jokes, sometimes you kid with them, or you just make it light if you really drive across, and then maybe you use silence also. Sometimes you can use silence to sort them out, not always shouting and all this. Words create more lasting impact. Again, as I mentioned, when my coach told me I set a good screen. So now, grassroots level is where communication is so important and forming values and all this. Now, for the last slide, this one. Help foster awareness. This is important by saying, I don't know as coaches if you use these words. Notice how you already are near the baseline and your speed is still too fast. For example, I'm driving, I lose the ball because I didn't stop. You can even say like this, hey, you're already on the baseline. Or, hey, you cannot control your speed. It's the same thing, but you are just telling them what you think is right. But if you ask them to notice what's wrong, you help them become more aware. So next time they're more spatial, more about the space. The next question, do you see the teammate running beside you? Because maybe you can just say, hey, pasa mo na. So you are just telling them what's wrong. You are not even asking them, did you see him? That's the first thing. Now, see where it goes. If you ask, did you see him? If you say, coach, no, because I was running too fast. Now, see, now they're trying to come up with, okay, because I run too fast, I was not looking. Now, you can also use this as a teaching point to the other person. Hey, what do you do? If you see him running too fast, call his attention. Hey, pass. So now you're making them understand what you want more than just telling them what you want. So like this, try moving your feet rather than flat. Something like that. When you teach, don't just go lift your feet. You can always make them try because we coaches know what's good. Let them try the bad first and then try it our way, something like that. Then you can let them do it. Now, are you about the feeling? Do you feel frustrated, confident? Are you scared? It's very important to also factor in the what they feel at that moment. For example, they lost the game-winning shot. So something like that. You can talk to them. Now, problem solving. How do you pass the problem solving to them? So you just ask, what do you plan to do? So when you dribble there, what's on your mind? So now at least there's no right or wrong. It's just something that what they think. Maybe they will say, Coach, I think I can take my man. Kaya ko'y kalaban, kaya dinala ko dun eh. So meron siyang process. We need to respect that they're thinking beings also. Cannot just say that, hindi mo nakita, libre na dito eh. Ganyan. Then, what can you use? Make them problem solve. What can you use? If you want that space, what can you use? Use your teammates, use your call. So something like that. This common coaches language, we are coming up with a handbook and I will dedicate one portion just use of language because it's very, very crucial and very critical, especially if there are parents listening at the back. You cannot just say anything else on your mind. So things like this, that's it. Coach Mel, you still there?
Ay, sorry, Coach. Ay, hindi pala nakaano. Very informative, Coach. Very helpful. Marami sana akong tatanong eh. Kaso, nasagot na lahat eh, sa presentation. And may I ask all the coaches kung sino pang may questions, you can ask Coach Kalvin.
Coach, I'll just open the lights.
Yes, Coach. How was it,
Raining
Coach?
here.
Thank you, Coach. Thank you, Coach Kalvin, sa presentation mo sa learning. Ang dami namin natutunan. At wala na akong tatanong. Kasi all answered. Other coaches, can you have a question for Coach Kalvin?
Coach.
Yes, Coach.
Good afternoon.
Coach.
I appreciate the briefing, if you will.
Yeah.
I went through many of these briefings when I was in the military and law enforcement. So I really appreciate the effort that you put in, and all of us coaches aren't always as organized as you are. But one of the things that it's come on my radar when I completed my USA basketball coaches training, they came up with something called Safe Sport. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. I know I talked to Coach John Wichiko about it, and he wasn't aware of it. He said there was something from Australia. But have you thought about that program, as far as the issues that you and I have talked about in the past, and which we won't go into, as far as how we can come up with a structure. Now, I know we've also talked about licensing coaches and getting that professional, which would help because there would be a body that would govern and accountability. But, you know, safe sport, where there's a place where the parents or the players can go if something happens, and there actually is something in place, you know, even through law enforcement, so that, you know, there is a safety built in, especially at the grassroots. So, you know, coaches are required to not just communicate, but to communicate in a way that's caring and loving, as in building up rather than tearing down, and things like that. So have you looked into that?
Yes, coach. So when you message us about the safe sports, so I checked that out also. Now, again, we mentioned about licensing. So
yes,
the topic is so unique and so good because especially now with this technology, it's very easy to get the information on what's needed. It talks about child safety, you know, against sexual harassment and all this, like child protection clause. It's very important if we are on this level, especially to gain the trust of parents who entrust the kids to us, even just for a short time within the day. Now, right now, there's 3 groups that are doing something. So I'll take this opportunity first to mention, of course, about PSC. So there's a National Coaching Certification Program. It's a multi-sport thing under the PSC. So they do it by region. So when you enroll, it's an online thing. You can get topics like this. It's not, because safe sport is more one group on its own, but this one is more on a general thing. But again, as I mentioned to you, what you call this, when we talk about licensing, there should be a law from the national. The next one is from PSC. So the next one I'm going to mention is SBP and BCAP. So we're also trying to do something to promote a handbook that coaches will follow. Now, it's not mandatory, of course, but when you create a culture that coaches need to get this certification or sort of training first before you hire them, then what will happen is we are not talking about the coaches now. We are talking about the future coaches. Because it's very hard to get the coaches who are coaching right now. But we are talking about 5 years down, 10 years down the road. If all new coaches have this handbook, and in the handbook it says specific what to do, at least for the basic one, then it's a bit okay to say we cannot remove them on their own. For example, they did something wrong. It's still up to the parent or up to the school. But as a body, as an association, it's not a sanction because there's no law for them. They can just, okay, I'm not a member of you anymore. But at least we can recommend what the school can do. At the same time, if they're a member of the association, we can say what a specific handbook article they violated. Something like that, because we expect down the road, there is a handbook that everyone will use. Now, the handbook itself, when you say, coach, what handbook is that? Is that a sort of licensing? You still know, still not licensing because you can choose not to use it. But as it grows more popular, especially down the road, maybe the schools or the teams, when they hire coaches, they will ask for you, did you attend any seminar, something like this? Not about your basketball knowledge, but it's more about, do you know how to handle a team, especially for kids, especially for girls, women's? So now, so I already mentioned PSC, I already mentioned BCAP and SBP. Now there's a specific one, for example, for women's under Coach Pat right now. Coach Rain, did you join that one? So it's a specific organization. So it's a national certification program. You need to submit your name. I think it's posted in the SBP page, but it's more specific for coaches who are coaching women's team. So those 3, because for me, coaching women is very, very different than coaching men. So those 3, I think right now are the safeguards that we can hope to use. Now, the last one, coach, is our vision is to make coaching a profession, not just a job. What do I mean? If it's a profession, there's a professional code of conduct, like doctors, lawyers, and all this. So once everyone in the federation, association are sold to this thing, we can use safe sport as an example of a merit, because our idea is we teach you the basic handbook first. And then from the handbook, there's many, many topics involved. For example, safety. So maybe we can partner with Philippine Red Cross. So all the coaches will know how to do CPR, how to do first aid, and all these
Right.
injury prevention, because you cannot coach without knowledge of this stuff. Then the next one, we tie up with Safe Sports, for example, for child safety and protection. And then maybe we also partner with the FACES for what you call this measurement and benchmarking of how to benchmark an athlete. So we try to get these organizations to work together with us to professionalize the coaching community.
That's awesome, Coach. It's great to hear
That's
there's
great,
some movement
Coach.
in that
Yes,
direction.
Coach. Hopefully, Coach, by
yeah.
2020, before 2020 ends, we can come up with something.
Okay. Well, just let us know how we coaches can help in that, you know, even if it has to go back to, we got to go back to some kind of online stuff to
Yes, Coach.
train. We just
But
so
right
we can
now,
make
Coach,
sure the kids are safe.
The online certification program of the PSC is on, I'll message you if you haven't seen it, but there's a link to that one you can register, and also the one for the SBP, Coaching Women.
Okay, so we can get the word out to all the coaches.
Yes, Coach.
Awesome. Thank you, Coach.
No
I
problem.
already received the message about the program.
Okay.
Yes, Coach.
Got to get
Coach
the word
Rain,
out.
any question for Coach Kalvin?
Hi, Coach. Wala po eh. Na-explain niya
Yeah.
talaga ng mabuti. Unti-unti eh. Siguro chance ko na po ito magpasalamat kasi talagang malaking impact po yung pagtulong niya sa 413. Baga siya na po yung naging mentor ng 413 kasi pag may time po, nagpupunta po siya sa clinic po namin. Ano niya po yung mga bata. So maraming salamat, Coach Kalvin.
You're
Yes,
welcome,
Coach
Coach.
Kalvin. Even we're in Indonesia, nawawala na lang yun. Nasa Coach, ito sa practice ko. Ganun kasi pag si Coach Kalvin. Coach, thank you so much, Coach. And sigurado, Coach, after this webinar, maraming ko contact sa'yo kasi yung presentation, Coach, yung learning, Coach, talagang sa ko lahat and talagang may na-highlights. Miss kaya ako, Coach, I have a lot of learning. And thank you, Coach, napadala mo yung slide kasi magagamit ko rin.
No problem,
I
Coach.
don't know about the
Magaling na
Congress. So,
speaker.
yes, Coach. Thank you, Coach. Thank you so much, Coach. And before we end, Coach,
Yes,
maraming salamat talaga ko sa sa presence mo, Coach. Talagang
No problem, Coach.
mahaba yung oras natin, pero mahaba yung oras natin, pero Coach, talagang very informative lahat.
Hindi na ako magtatanong, Coach. Baka buti tayo alas 5.
Yes, Coach. Coach, before we end, I would like to say, Coach, maraming salamat, Coach, sa mga sponsors natin.
Yes,
Coach Ariel Vanguardia, Hoops Coaches International, Medalya Sports Clothing, Instant, Gab Consultant, and Pamilya Washington kay Coach Enrico, and non-stop support natin kay Coach Enrico. And Dubai, Congress Sports Dubai, maraming salamat. Before we end, Coach David, can you lead us in our prayer, closing prayer, Coach?
Sure. Father in heaven, we come to you and thank you for Coach Kalvin. Ask you to continue to use him mightily, Lord, not just in the Philippines, but the entire Asia area. Lord, with the wisdom of how to manage sports, Lord, and to integrate and bring safety for all the coaches and players as well, and integrating families, and Lord, just to make things right. So we thank you for this time that we get to learn and grow and spend time together, and ask you to bless it in Jesus' name. Amen. And amen.
And before we end, I would like to ask apology for those who nag-register na sa Zoom tapos hindi nakapasok. I-check namin what happened. Sorry ulit po doon sa mga naka-register. Kaya sinand ko kagad via Facebook Live yung natin para makapanood sila.
Coach,
Maraming
promote
salamat.
lang ako, mabilis lang.
Yes, Coach.
So,
Go ahead, Coach.
NBA
We have to
is
have a
back.
part 2, by the way, so we can get all the questions. Yeah.
Yes, Coach. NBA is back.
Yes.
Ang official
Let's go.
partner in the Philippines is One Sports on Channel 5. Junior NBA, we still have the home court, and Coach Dave's son is one of our leaders there. We're already in round 3, going to the semifinals. Please follow Junior NBA Asia. And of course, you need to follow our federation also, SBP. You follow the Basketball Coaches Association of the Philippines. It's a very, very good community right now during this pandemic. If something is going right, of course, we all pray that everything goes away, this virus goes away. But what's going in the right direction is coaches working together from all over the Philippines, even abroad, like Coach Enrico. So that's really, really a blessing.
Yeah.
Yes, Coach. A big blessing
Thank you, Coach.
having you here, Coach.
Thank you, Coach, for having me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you, Coach. See you again,
We
Coach.
really
Hope
appreciate
to see you eye to eye soon, Coach.
Yeah.